Alright guys, we're heading out on Lake Superior today, doing a little trout fishing, but I'm going to show you how to put out a small boat spread. There's a few tips and tricks for using a small boat and a small setup that can work really well on big water, so I'll be going over a few of those, how to rig some rods up for this, and hopefully get you into some fish. You don't need a lot of money and gear, and as long as you got good weather, you can come out here on Lake Superior and catch fish, so let's try and make it happen. Alright, so what we're doing here today is we're utilizing a few different techniques. We're using lead core, downriggers, and we're also using Dipsy Divers. Oftentimes it works really well to kind of mix and match because you can get lines spread out a little bit better that way. So how we've got it set up right now is a downrigger right off the back, then a Dipsy on a side setting, which I'll show you in a little bit. That kind of pulls it away from the boat, and then we've got our lead core out on the sides on boards, and that spreads it out not only, you know, up and down the water column, but also horizontally. It gives you a little bit more spread. If you don't have downriggers, it's fine. I've got another video, I'll leave a link for that up here, but basically how to troll if you don't have downriggers. That's probably your highest investment when it comes to equipment, but you don't really need one. You can get by with just lead core, Dipsies. You can make a decent spread on a small boat, just that. So all right, Chris is on our first fish. We lost one, dumped it, but we got one on the same rod. That's a good start. Nice eating size fish. Right now we've got two fish in the boat, and they both come in that mid column, so about 40 to 50 feet down in around 75 to 80 feet of water. So we've kind of moved our spread a little bit tighter up into that 30 to 60 feet range. As you get bites, you kind of start to put a pattern together. So far we've got 3 bites. We dumped 1 and caught 2, and they've all been mid-column on spoons. So that seems to be the pattern that's shaping up here. I'll show you more details here in a minute on how we rig all this stuff up, but that's basically the big picture. Alright, so first I'm going to show you how we use the downriggers, and I've just got simple hand crank downriggers, and they work great for a small boat like this when I'm only running 2. I don't really need the electric ones. They're nice, but these are really easy to take on and off, and I use this boat for a lot of other stuff. So basically all I've got here is 30-pound braid, and I've got a swivel here and about a 12-foot leader, and then I've got my spoon tied with a little snap on there. We're just going to let that about 20 to 30 feet back. That's a very simple system. All I've got is a 10-pound ball here with a snubber going to my downrigger, and then a little short wire leader with a clip on it going to the ball off the back. And I'm gonna clip the line in all the way to the back of it, pinch it down really good. I'll open up the bail with the clicker on my rod, set it in the rod holder, and now with these hand cranks, just loosen that crank up a little bit, and then I palm the spool as it goes down. That's the easiest way to do it. And I'm just going to watch this line counter. When it gets back down to the depth that we've been catching them at, then I'm going to stop it. Now I also have live scope set up, so I'm using live scope to watch the ball go down and actually see exactly what depth we're at. Alright, now I'm just going to tighten that down in place. Now what I want to do is I want to crank this line down so it's nice and tight up against that clip. Now it's set, and now that ball is just sitting there with that spoon behind it, and hopefully we can get another bite here shortly on that. That's been our best rod so far. A little better fish. Chunky one. There we go. A fatty. Well, that one came on that watermelon spoon after we moved it up, and right in that mid column again, right about 40 feet down. That's a nice chunky laker right there. Good eater. Alright, so the second system that we're using to get our baits down deep to these lake trout is called a Dipsy Diver. And this is a mag Dipsy Diver, and they make another size called the regular size. And basically what these do is they plane your bait down. So as you pull them through the water, they're going to pull your bait down. And one of my favorite things to put off the back of a Dipsy, and I'm going to put it about 10 to 12 feet back off this Dipsy, is what are called a flasher and fly. And this is a great combination for lake trout or salmon. When we're fishing lake trout, we like to have a fly with this little spinner on here. It's called a spin and glow. For salmon, oftentimes we'll just put a fly on there with just some flasher boo. And you want to put that about 3 flasher lengths back from your flasher. So 1, 2, 3. And that gives that fly motion back there. It spins and kind of rotates and makes it spin around, and those fish are attracted to that big flashy flasher. It brings them in from a long way. And then that Dipsy pulls it down and gets it to depth. And you can run a bait down to about 80 feet on a mag Dipsy, and it does a really good job of getting that bait down there to where those lake trout are. So you kind of have to toss this in the water and manage that 10 to 12 feet of line. So it's a little bit extra work. You have to have enough room to back up when you hook a fish so that the person can back to the front of the boat so you can net it. But that's really all there is to it. And you can see the charts on a Dipsy that come in the package that tell you how much line to let out to get it to a certain depth. And then also a Dipsy can be directional. So it's got a little weight here, and you can twist the weight one way or another, like so. And that will make it ride off to one side or the other. And that's perfect for running a spread when you've got 2 downriggers out the back, and then you can run 2 Dipsies off to the side and kind of spread your lines out. And that's option number 2 for getting your lines down to these fish. All right, so our third option for getting our bait down to lake trout and salmon is to use a lead core rod. And lead core is simply line that is filled with lead that's going to sink as you troll it. And lead core comes in colors, so each color sinks approximately 5 feet. So as we put these colors out, we can know roughly how deep that lure is going to run. And then if you got a crankbait on there, you have to add the crankbait's dive curve to that. But if we're running a spoon like this, basically if we say put 6 colors of lead out, we're going to have roughly 30 feet down on that spoon. So these get really long, and you got to have a big spool to spool up a full 10 colors of lead like we have on here. But you can also spool up as little as 2, 6, and you can have different rods set up for different lengths of lead core, and that works pretty well. And you just run them straight off the back of the boat, or you can run them out to the side on a planer board, which is another advantage of lead core. You can run them on planer boards, and you can really spread out and still get your lines down deep, and that works really, really well for trolling out on Lake Superior. All right, we just hooked another fish on that exact same downrigger just a couple minutes after we caught that last one. Just dropped it back down to depth, and that's the beauty of a downrigger, is you can get it to exact depth really, really precisely. There we go, another nice eater lake trout. So another tool we use out here a lot is planer boards. And you'll use these to get the line spread away from the boat like I was just talking about. And we're just gonna clip that line in there, pop the pin and slide it in the back. And now when I put this in the water, it's gonna plane away from the boat and pull it as far as I want to let line out away from the boat. And that way you can really spread your lines out. In the springtime, we don't need to get our lines deep, so we just throw 3 or 4 boards off each side with just some stick baits off of them. And that's a great way to catch a mixed bag of salmon and trout out here on Lake Superior. And so we use the boards for that, but also when we're running deep, we can spread out a few lines deeper on that lead core and get them away from the boat. So as far as what boat is safe on Lake Superior, really you can use even a 16-foot V-hull boat with a good reliable engine on it in good weather, but you do have to have a few things in mind. Number one, you got to watch the wind forecast, and the direction of the wind is almost as important as how strong it is. If it's coming from the open lake, it's much more dangerous than if it's coming offshore. So watch that wind forecast first of all. The second thing really is to have a secondary motor of some sort, at least a trolling motor, but preferably a kicker. Like I have my big motor for getting out there, and then I've got my kicker for trolling and as a backup. That's super key. Repeat systems, you know, have several different ways of getting back. And then you need a radio and flares so that you can call for help, as well as to shoot a flare off so people can find you if something happens to go wrong. Definitely recommend a first aid kit and having all of your PFDs and everything. Make sure that you have everything up to Coast Guard specifications. You can look that up online and find out what the Coast Guard requires of a boat on Lake Superior. But a beautiful day like this, you could take a pontoon out here and it'd be perfectly fine. But you do definitely want to respect the lake and watch the weather very closely. So how I have my boat set up for rod holders, I just use single rod holders, 1, 2, 3, and then my downriggers on the end. And I can run 8 lines out of this setup, no problem. And I even have 2 more in the front if I want to run 9 or 10. You know, 3 lines per person here in Wisconsin, obviously. So when there's 2 of us like today, we can only run 6. But if you have another guy, you can run more. Some guys use trees and they stack their rods and stuff like that. But again, I'm trying to keep it simple. There's really no need to do that. And this works just fine for a small boat like this. And then I'm just staggering them out as much as I can to spread them out so they're not getting tangled up. And really, to avoid tangles, it doesn't really matter so much where your rods are. It matters more where your lines are stacked and all that. So that's basically how I have my boat set up. And then as far as the trolling part, you can see right now I'm going in a straight line. I use my trolling motor in the front of the boat to actually control my direction. And then I have my kicker motor giving me the push. So that basically, I don't have to touch the boat. It just goes where I need it to go. And that works really well for staying in a straight line so I can fight fish and don't have to worry about the boat going off course while I'm working on other stuff. Doubled up. Another downrigger fish. That seems to be the ticket today. All right, just a little bit more about the lures we're using. When I mentioned a flasher fly and kind of went over that, this is just an opti tackle flasher, and I like white and blues and greens. That's kind of smelt colors, Cisco colors. And then this would be just a little spin and glow with a flashy blue tail on it. And the spin and glows work good for lake trout a lot of times, but salmon not so much. And a lot of times I'll just put a flasher and a plain fly like this one on. They come in a box like that. This is just an opti tackle, and again, greens and blues work pretty well. You got better odds at a salmon with that, but some days the lake trout really like that spin and glow, so you kind of got to experiment. And as far as spoons go, there's really a couple different sizes. You know, we've got your 4-inch spoons, your 5-inch spoons, your 6-inch spoons. And again, experiment with size, experiment with shape, color. But I'll give you a few of my favorites. So watermelon, goldback is always a classic, good spoon. And then Bloody Nose is one of the spoons I got out there right now, and that's just a white with a red nose on it. And that's, if I am trolling on Lake Superior, I almost always have a Bloody Nose spoon on. Now here's a couple more. This one's a little bit bigger, watermelon color. This one's like a orange with kind of that black and silver contrast in the middle. And again, whatever spoon gets hit the most, you can start changing them over. And that's what it's all about, is just finding that size and that shape. Now today, we've had most of our hits on watermelon and Bloody Nose in the 4 and 5-inch spoons, so that's been our best bait today. Now the only other baits we really use besides flasher flies and spoons out here are stick baits. And some of my favorite stick baits would be like the Rapala Scatter Wrap Husky Jerks. Those have been really good. Rosemore Outdoor Gear, these little stick baits are good. Basically a lot of the same stuff you would use for trolling for walleyes you can use out here for lake trout and salmon. Oftentimes we don't use these as much once the fish go deep in the summer like they are now, but when we're flatline trolling with lots of boards, we use them quite a bit. All right, Chris is on the first fish on the flasher fly here. Hopefully it's a salmon, but we'll see. A little bigger one. bit deeper, into 110, and pulled off the first bigger lake trout of the day here. And that was on the flasher fly on the Dipsy, so something completely different than we were catching the fish on earlier. But that's why you spread them out. Now, one more nice thing to have in the boat is a really nice net with a big bag on it and an extendable handle for these trout. You never know when you're going to get a big one, and it's nice to have that big net just in case. And then the extendable handle really lets you get out there and net those fish before they come off at the back of the boat. And this is a clam tortoise net. I'll leave a link in the description for this net. It's been a really good one for me for trolling. And also, I'll leave a link for everything else that I'm talking about here in the description as well, so you can pick it up. I'll leave a nice list of things that I've been using, and you can grab them. You just go in the description and click that link. Alright guys, well, it was a beautiful day out here. We caught fish on everything we tried. We caught fish on lead core, on 10 color lead core. We caught fish on the Dipsy Diver and a flasher fly, and we caught fish on the spoons off the Downriggers. And the spoons off the Downriggers were definitely our best setup today, and we caught most of the fish suspended in mid-column, but we did catch fish a few other ways too, so it's always good to run that spread and kind of dial it in like we did, and move things up and down, move things sideways, keep changing baits until you start catching fish and put a pattern together out here. So remember to stay safe and watch the weather when you get out here, but otherwise come out and have a good time, and we'll catch you later. Get hooked up.